In this video, let's continue talking about Jin Yong's wuxia novels adaptations to dramas. Hi, you're watching Up New X, where junkie and good storytelling shares their thoughts, knowledge, and occasional weird ideas on stories and how they're told. This is the following video of the previous video that focuses on Jin Yong's wuxia novels and their adaptations onto the small screen. Today, I'm gonna talk about another 3, but they're not actually connected, they're not in a trilogy, but they each have something that's very unique, that is very different from the rest of Jin Yong's work. And also, these 3 are also some of the most well-known work of his entire collection and have been made into some very successful TV adaptations. Chronologically, they all happened after the Counter Hero trilogy, so often it gets considered as his later works. And I'm going to talk about the 3 of them in the order they were written. The first one of the 3 is one of the most well-known of all his wuxia novels, that is 天龙八部. The English title is Demigods and Semi-Devils. 天龙八部 is actually a term in Buddhism. I can't quite remember what is the exact sort of the Sanskrit pronunciation of this word, but it's a noun that is given to a particular group of beings that we can consider them as other dimensional beings in modern scientific kind of way of looking at things. They're not humans. They have different types of appearances and for example, like bird, like dragon, they have kind of supernatural powers as opposed to human beings, but they are also still within the entire samsara, so they are also bound to the law of karma, so they need to reincarnate just like humans. They often are supporter of Buddhism and Buddha, so they often act as protectors of the faith. 天龙八部 really, it means that a lot of supernatural powerful beings that are from all different kinds of races, and that actually reflects the core of this novel. It's written between 1963 and 1967 and also serialized on his 明报, the newspaper. This is one of his longest works in the long-form novels, and it probably took him the longest time to write because it's a solid 4 years. But this book is not just big in terms of volume, it also features, I think, the largest number of characters within one story, within the entire canon of Jin Yong's work. To start with, you have 3 male leads, not just one, not just 2, 3, and they're kind of equal weight throughout the whole thing. Then you have a multitude of women. Some of them are directly related to them, others are, like more peripheral. You have a lot of supporting roles around all those 3 main male characters. This is one of the novels, although that has so many characters, you would never mistaken one for another, so that's given to the writer's ability. This story is also set in Song Dynasty. It would be actually earlier than the Counter Hero trilogy because it's North Song at the last but one emperor before the north to south transition of the dynasties. And it's also very much worked into the actual history, the actual timeline. So this is the strength of most of Jin Yong's wuxia novel, is most of them actually have very specific time and very specific events that actually happened in history worked into its fictional character and plots. And sometimes it's really clever and ingenious at how he does that. Starting from this novel, you see the writer starts to question a lot of things that he was pretty solid or sure about in his previous works, especially to those very sensitive questions about group identity, really. Because previously when in the Counter Hero trilogy, you can see he is completely standing at the Zhongyuan, so the traditional Middle Kingdom Chinese, Han Chinese identity. And the other nations mostly are just invaders and bad people. Whereas starting in 天龙八部, you see so many different groups of people. The main lead characters, one of them believed himself to be a Han person, but realized he actually is the son of a Liao family. So Liao is the northern country that actually had a very complicated relationship with Bei Song, North Song dynasty. Often Chinese history is viewed from the Han nation's angle, and we would think the Middle Kingdom as the sort of our position, whereas everyone else is just others. Whereas in this novel, you see he does question a lot about, does it mean just because you're others, then you're a bad person? And does it mean if you are the sort of Middle Kingdom people, then you are just intrinsically good? Obviously, it's not. So Qiao Feng is the guy who basically thought he was a Han person, wasn't. And because of the identity, he had his downfall, but also his crisis, and he's sort of trying to make peace with who he is. It's a huge part of the entire story. Another main lead, Duan Yu, he is from Dali. He is one of the royal family members of Dali, which does exist in history. It's a sort of southwestern, very small country that is its own country during Song Dynasty, as opposed to the sort of Middle Kingdom. So it's a small kingdom, has its own sort of everything, and it's actually very funny that he comes from that. So he represents a different identity as the Middle Kingdom people. Then you have Xu Zhu, who just has the wildest adventure as a monk who knows really very little about Kung Fu, is very ugly. He has nothing that should make him a male lead character. But he goes on this adventure and eventually marries a princess from Xixia. Xixia, again, is another western country to the Middle Kingdom at the time. And then you also have Tubo, which is the current of Tibet. So in this story, you have so many people coming from all different countries, and the Middle Kingdom no longer is sort of the authority or the voice of everything, of what is right, what is wrong, what is morality, whatever. And there are good and bad of every sort of group of people. So I think if you want to look at 天龙八部 from a higher point of view rather than just an entertainment literature, you would really see it is really questioning a much more fixated view on national identity in earlier works of his, and he start to think about things, from different perspectives and angles. So that makes this novel very milestone. But just as the story itself, it is crazy, right? It's one of the most exciting books. It has so many things happening with so many characters. That makes it great material to adapt to screen. I'm gonna only talk about two in this video. The two that I think is most influential and most people know about these two. The first one was made in 1997 and often considered to be the most successful, the best, the canon version of TV adaptation. It's made in Hong Kong by TVB, and it's led by Huang Rihua, Chen Haoming, Fan Shaohuang, and then you have Li Ruotong, Liu Yucui, Liu Jingling. Like, the name goes on because there's so many characters and they're all important. Like, nobody is less important than other people, especially the core group of like half a dozen people. All the actors are just perfect cast for their role. The acting is just on spot. And I loved it so much. I think I was still in middle school, very early middle school, first year. I remembered I actually used brush and ink and wrote down the theme song, the lyrics, on the inside of my desk at school, because we have this old wooden desk that actually has two hinges, and you flip open, you can put your stuff inside. So when you open it, on the inside of that wooden thing, I actually wrote down the entire theme song's lyrics. It's a beautiful song, 天龙八部's song. I still think it's one of the best wuxia song ever written. I actually wrote the whole thing during lunch break one day, so I still remember I did that. I don't know what happened to that desk. Probably now it's just in some landfill. If you haven't seen it, you really should. If you're not gonna watch any old sort of 90s TVB wuxia drama, watch this one. This is the one that you should watch, if not anything else. Then the second one is made in mainland China, 2004, and it's led by Hu Jun, Lin Zhiying, Gao Hu. You have Liu Yifei in that, and Chen Hao as well, Liu Tao. When you look at that cast, right, most of them are actually now like the most sort of famous and important actors. As similarly as I've explained it in the Kondo Hero trilogy's adaptations, because China's mainland has some natural advantages, such as we can go to real mountain and locations to shoot stuff. So the mainland version features as you can expect. Much better sets, so more realistic costumes, lesser sort of like made on set, but more like actually shot in mountains or in whatever real sets. And that's always one advantage that the mainland productions have. In terms of acting, actually, the main core leads actually are okay, like they're good. But I think because the TVB version gave people such a strong impression, and the mainland version is not necessarily much better, or maybe it's just about the same, and I would say some main characters are lesser good at acting just because they're less experienced. For example, Liu Yifei was like what, only 17 still at the time when she did this, or something like that. So certain young actors are not as experienced, so they're not as precise and accurate at their acting as their character as what you would see in TVB, because TVB actors, they may not be age-wise perfect fitting into their roles, but their actings are just so trained and practiced and crafted. I think a lot of the younger actors in mainland China in those adaptations are just not up there at the same ability of acting. It's still a very good production, and there's very little you can actually pick about, you know, like this is not good, that is not good. I know currently they're making another version, and the leaked photos are just like, no, please, maybe just don't make it. It's 2019. The previous version happened 15 years ago, and your costume looks worse than that time. How does that explain anything? So 天龙八部personally is, I would say, my favorite Jin Yong's novel among everything, in terms of excitement, in terms of density of plot, so many characters, and just so many interesting things happening at the same time. So if you haven't read any of his novels, this definitely should be one that you need to read. Proper adventure book in the wuxia world. Then the second novel, written between 1967 and 69, immediately after 天龙八部, is 笑傲江湖. Oh yeah, let me just look at the title, because the titles are always just completely weird. Smiling Proud Wanderer? Okay, it's such a literal translation, it doesn't make sense. 笑傲江湖. I would almost say 笑傲江湖 is not really a noun kind of title. It is more talking about the main lead's attitude of how he believes he should live, which is, 笑 means smile or laugh. In Chinese, it's the same character. 傲 means being proud, but when you being smiling and proud, it's almost like I don't care about what other people think. I'm just gonna live my life the way I want, as a very carefree spirit. 江湖, as I've explained in my previous video, if you're interested, you can check it out. And so it's more like the main character's attitude about how he should live, or how he wants to live his life, which is very accurate to the novel's sort of essence. So smiling one, proud wanderer. It really just doesn't translate that. It's so weird. Why is this one a unique one as well? This is the only Jin Yong novel long form, so he has written short stories, but long novels. His only one that actually never specified what is the time period. So what was the outside world? What is the political atmosphere? Which dynasty? Which king? What are the big things that are happening in the world that the story is sitting in? This is the only one that doesn't have any clear specification about where are they in time. There are many speculations because the novel goes through different edits. So in certain edits, people, through the description of appearance, people think it's Qing dynasty. Then there are certain edits, people would think it's Ming dynasty. And then the different edits would actually take out these things, so eventually nobody really knows where 笑傲江湖 is set in. So it's the only one of his long novels that actually doesn't have a real historical background. In this story, it comes back from the big, very epic multiple character story of 天龙八部, and it focuses really just on one person. So it's his journey. The main male lead character Lin Huchong, and everybody that happens to have a very essential relationship with him. So there are 5 very important mountains in China, and those mountains are real. In this story, each mountain has a 派别. So 派别 is like the different sort of divisions or fractions or whatever you think. They have different style of fighting. And they come together and formed an alliance called 五岳 because 5 mountains. And one of them is like all nuns. The other one is like all this, all that. Anyway, there are 5 of them. And Ling Huchong as the main lead belongs to Huashan Pai. All those 5 groups, they tend to believe themselves as the absolute morality sort of police of Jianghu because they are 名门正派. They're the good people. They're the proper ones. Whereas there's also 邪教, right? The bad one, which is 日月神教, Sun and Moon sort of cult. Or it's almost like when you listen to that, it's almost like a religion, and where they're supposed to be bad guys, all the bad guys. So led by Dongfang Bubai, who is a very interesting character. If you read the novel, you'll know he's sort of this transsexual person who is just so good at fighting with needles. Yeah, that makes sense. And then he basically usurped the position of the lead of 日月神教 from the previous leader and 任我行. And then 任我行has a daughter who is 任盈盈, who is the lead female role in the story, who eventually got together with Ling Huchong. So Ling Huchong comes from the good people, and his future sort of love interest comes from the bad people. And eventually in the story's development, you realize the good people are actually not good people. They're really shady. They do really terrible things. They're not good at all. The bad people are not really bad at all. So again, it's trying to spin that idea about identity, about group identity, spin the idea about who is right, who is wrong, who is evil, who is good, and how actually in reality is super muddy. You don't really know. 笑傲江湖 is an ideal book if you want to adapt it to screen and make a really cool male character that's kind of the center of the entire narrative. So this one actually has also multiple adaptations. In the 80s, it was actually, there was Zhou Runfa actually acted in one version in the 80s. You know, one of the biggest actors ever in the Hong Kong cinema. But I haven't seen it because it's too old. And I'm gonna talk about 3 adaptations, but mainly 2. So the first one I've gone through and is my favorite version is the 1996 version. This version is led by Lu Songxian and Liang Yiling. In my opinion, they are the best. Ling Huchong and Ren Yingying, as how they did the roles, their acting, their portrayal. They also have very good Dongfang Bubai. Dongfang Bubai needs to be one of the most important roles in the story because he's so different. He's the only super powerful in terms of his fighting skills, but also he's a gender non-specific person, and that itself makes it so interesting. And the actor who played that, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, did such an amazing job. Then in 2001, there's a mainland adaptation version. So basically, when mainland starts to do Jin Yong, the first one is 笑傲江湖 in 2001, led by Zhang Jizhong as the sort of producer of the whole thing. And they casted Li Yapeng and Xu Qing as Ling Huchong and Ren Yingying. Li Yapeng, pretty well known, previously married to Fei Wang. I wouldn't say he's a bad Ling Huchong, but I think he is very different from how, in terms of appearance-wise, how people traditionally think Ling Huchong should look like. Because Ling Huchong in the beginning of the story, he's a very relaxed. He knows that he's good looking. He knows he's pretty good at fighting. He has that sort of confidence and a little tiny slight bit of smirk, but he's a very good guy in his heart. But he would carry himself in a much more lighter way. Who is actually conscious of about like he is actually an attractive guy, whereas Li Yapeng just has the most stern and serious sort of air coming from him. You would believe he would be the person who would be the big brother of the family, who's always responsible, acting properly, hardly ever lose control or just do something outrageous. You would not believe he would be anyone like that. Li Yapeng just has that very serious face. You can't believe he could be somebody who is more Ling Huchong-ish. And then Xu Qing is not bad, but then I think Xu Qing at the time, her age is a little bit like, you know, like more much more than what Ren Yingying would be. She just doesn't really fit into the age group, and she cannot really, through her acting, convince you that she is that teenager young girl. So it's a bit weird, the pairing, and I feel a lack of chemistry between these leads. And so I've seen the whole thing. I remember there's a really ridiculous fight with Qing, and I don't like. In wuxia, right? They fight with Qing because Qing is an instrument. You cannot use it as a weapon. It will just break into pieces. You can't fight with it. There are ways they do it. It's just really ridiculous. But then Qing is actually very important to the story. So I understand, but again, it's weird when you see screen adaptations about how they actually use that instrument. It's not a bow. You can't shoot arrows from it, let's just say. So I'm not a huge fan of this version, but it's the first one that started a series of mainland adaptation of Jin Yong's work. Then very recently, well, not that recently, but much more recently into the 2010s, in 2013, there's a mainland version again with Huo Jianhua and Chen Qiaoen. It's produced by Yu Zheng, so you know what you should expect. There are a couple of things I remember from it. I haven't seen the whole thing. I kind of watched a few episodes. First is the color is just horrendous. The costume is just so bright. They're like everything is neon lights. It's just ugh. Then they changed Dongfang Bubai into an actual woman because Dongfang Bubai is a guy, okay, who practiced the particular 葵花宝典, which made him basically eunuch. And so he's very girly and he uses needles, but he's really strong. Like nobody can beat him, and he's the strongest person in the whole thing. Nobody ever beats him. Yeah, in this drama they actually turned her into a woman. No, you can't do that to Jin Yong. It's not forgivable. No. So that's what I want to talk about that one. Then let's talk about the third one. This video is getting way too long. Way too long. Right after 笑傲江湖, he wrote his last long novel. Afterwards, he wrote short stories, but this is the last one of his entire sort of long novel canon, and it's written between 69, so right after 笑傲江湖 272. Like it's roughly same length, almost to the exact same length as Demigod Semi-Devil, and it is the very well-known 鹿鼎记. The Deer and The Cauldron, I think that would be the translation. It's actually correct. So if you don't have any idea about Chinese literature, traditional canon literature, you might be very, very confused about the title. 鹿鼎记 is a mixture of the phrase 逐鹿天下 and then 问鼎中原 or 问鼎 something. So basically, 逐鹿, chasing the deer, comes from a very ancient text. Basically, it is about politics. So when you chase the deer, it's like you want to go into a race with other people or fight to get power. 鼎 is big cauldron made of metal, I think copper, historically. And it's a symbolism of some reigning powers control. The emperor who has would usually make a huge one to symbolize his power of the controlling of the entire empire. This novel is set in Qing dynasty, so the latest in terms of chronologically as opposed to history, and it's heavily buried into real history. You have obviously the main character as a fictional character, Wei Xiaobao, but then most of the other sort of actual important roles that you would read and come across in the Qing Manchurian court are real people in history. So this is a very heavily blended fictional and realistic historical story. And it's one of the least wuxia-like novel of Jin Yong's work, which is why it's often considered as the most unique one. A lot of people would consider it to be Jin Yong's book that comes closest to becoming serious literature instead of just being wuxia, because 鹿鼎记 actually has very little wuxia elements. If you look at his previous stories, the story heavily focuses on those crazy skills he invented with those names and then how people fight, and it's like spectacular. Whereas in this one, even the strongest fighters, the best ones, are like not spectacular at all. They're like really boring. And our main lead is really bad at wuxia. Even till the end, he's not like good at fighting at all. He learns tricks instead of actually skills, and his only purpose is to run away from dangers, and just as long as I can survive, I don't care what I do. So he would do really not very morally sort of like correct things. He would use tools, use poisons, use weird stuff to get out of weird situations. And also he has like super protective gears to save him from dying a gazillion times. So Wei Xiaobao is not a hero. He's not good at fighting. And in the whole book, even the best fighters are like much lesser powerful than what you would see in the previous books. So this is actually not that much about wuxia, but it's so interesting because it focuses on politics. It focuses on all the trickeries, what Chinese people are best at doing with like brain manipulation and play. It also focuses on a character who is so not heroic, and he comes from the most terrible kind of background that you can imagine. He's the son of a prostitute who doesn't know which guy made her pregnant, so she's not sure who is the dad of her baby. Wei Xiaobao could be a Han person, could be a Manchurian, could be a Mongolian, could be a Tibetan monk's kid. Like, he doesn't know. He never finds out who he really is in terms of parentage. He comes from those humble, terrible background. He grew up in the worst kind of environment. He has no morality in the beginning, I would say, and he only cares about how to survive, how to get money, how to cheat people out of money. He does all the kind of horrible things, and through some miraculous encounters, he ended up in Imperial Palace, Forbidden City, and befriended Emperor Kangxi, the most successful emperor of the Qing dynasty and often considered to be one of the most successful emperors throughout China's entire history of having emperors. If you list 10 of the best emperors in China's history, he would be like in the first 3. Because Wei Xiaobao's wit and his understanding of surviving, he quickly gains power, gains money, and becomes friends with absolutely just crazy important historical figures in official court of the Kangxi Emperor. So you see the fictional character start to have a very interesting relationship with all the real people that actually recorded in history, and it's just wild. The story is wild. The depiction of the insanity and bureaucracy of that court, the guanchang, the very famous Chinese guanchang, right? The officials' kind of battlefield, all the conspiracies, all the people's just trickery against each other to get power, the absolute two-facedness of everyone in front of power. It's almost like a satire, like a political satire piece about the ridiculous things that people make themselves or turn themselves into to get power, to get money, to navigate this insane field of guanchang. So this is almost like a guanchang novel instead of a wuxia novel. It obviously has wuxia elements. The adaptation of this novel also have multiple ones, but I am only gonna talk about actually, I'm gonna mention 3, but I'm gonna only talk about one really that I really loved. Is the 1998, again made in Hong Kong, and led by Chen Xiaochun and Ma Junwei. And it has Liu Yucui, has Liang Xiaobing, another sort of array of very famous Hong Kong actors. This one is so good. Like, I can't pick anything bad about it. Everybody's acting is on point, so good. Chen Xiaochun, he's such a talented person. He can sing very well, he acts really well, and he happens to be not those apparently good-looking people that like are born for screens. He has this very ordinary, almost person look that if you come across him on the street and don't know, you would just not even think about him as an actor. But when he goes on screen and play his roles, he's so there. His portrayal of Wei Xiaobao is still my favorite. Because Wei Xiaobao is very dangerous, like it's very easy to play him to be a very crazy, what we call Yoni character, because he is, right? He's like super quick, super slippery, that type of person, and it's very easy to make him not likable. But his portrayal of Wei Xiaobao is funny, but at the same time very candid and genuine, and you actually grow to care about him as a person. And he can play that sort of extremely funny side with that very serious and actually very truthful side. He can do that sort of shift between these two sides very quickly. And I love Ma Junwei's emperor, Kangxi. I think this pair goes super well. You can see that they, as they're young friends, when at the beginning of the story they care about each other, They depend on each other. They have a lot of fun. As the time goes on and the story progresses, they start to actually be pulled basically onto kind of opposite position. But even till the very end, when they kind of have to become enemies, they still actually care about each other as friends, as the young friends that they used to be as playmates. And they do that so well. Actually, I think the strongest relationship in this version is definitely between the two male characters. It's such a funny and very faithful adaptation of the original material. Then I think in 2000, there's a Taiwan version with Zhang Weijian. Also features a lot of famous people like Lin Xinru and Zhu Yin. I think I've looked at that one. I definitely actually have watched that one. But then for some reason, before I actually did the research, I kind of just completely forgotten about that version. It didn't leave an impression on me, so I don't understand quite like why that happened. I did watch it, but I just don't remember it, so maybe that says something about it. Then there's a version in 2008 done in mainland, still Zhang Jizhong, that whole wave of adapting Jin Yong, with Zhong Hanliang and Huang Xiaoming. Huang Xiaoming as Wei Xiaobao, Zhong Hanliang as Kangxi. Such a weird cast choice. Wei Xiaobao is somebody you would not expect as a hero, becomes a hero. And Huang Xiaoming just, his face screams, I'm the main character. So, yeah, it's very weird. Zhong Hanliang is good looking, for sure. But, like, his pairing with Huang Xiaoming doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't fit at all. I think I've seen, actually, this one, not every episode, but I was, like, really fed up with the very superficial acting from Huang Xiaoming's Wei Xiaobao, who's, like, basically acting Wei Xiaobao's that slipperiness of being born in certain environment and be super clever and tricky and quick and not showing people what he really is. He just always acting that type of character. Huang Xiaoming just is acting that. Like, he's overacting all the time, so I couldn't even stand him. So I think I didn't see the whole thing. I think there's actually another version in 2014, made in mainland, and that version is even worse. So I think I've only glimpsed at it and decided not to watch it. So it's led by Han Dong. So if you know him, he's one of the actors from 步步惊心, Scarlet Heart. He's in a lot of dramas. Yes, but that version, just I think I took a quick look at it and ran away. So I can't say for the whole thing, but I'm pretty sure it's not the best version because nobody kind of talked about it at all. In terms of 鹿鼎记, whenever people talk about 鹿鼎记, they really just, a lot of people would just go to Chen Xiaochun's version in their head. Maybe Zhang Weijian's version, the Taiwan version in 2000s as well. So at the end, I want to quickly talk about one thing that I think I forgot to mention. All of those three books, they're all written during the 60s. This is a very particular time in China's history, if you don't know. It's the 10 years of Cultural Revolution. Jin Yong was in Hong Kong, so it's not that affected by the mainland craze. Political movement, but it still leaked through. Like, Hong Kong wasn't really under the control of China's central government, but then you cannot stop that from coming to people. So the very leftist movement, often his newspaper gets attacked at the time by a lot of that type of movement. So he definitely has gone through some difficult times during those times. And when you look at 天龙八部, you look at 笑傲江湖, you look at 鹿鼎记, their focus is on this type of identities, right? Almost everybody has identity crisis and who is good and who is bad, and the hystericalness of certain groups. And throughout those three novels, you can see a lot of that in the stories world, reflecting what is happening at the time in the real world. And I think so that's why people often think those three books are actually very telling about the writer's mentality at the time and the political atmosphere, and how that actually influences his style and what he looks at and what the story is kind of trying to dig at and trying to work out what is going on. So that makes those three books that much unique, and they're written in a consecutive time within that sort of 10 years, but also they are each extremely different. they're almost completely different in terms of what angle, what type of world they're trying to look at. I think if you really want to understand Jin Yong, those three books are the most important one, especially to the later sort of his career and as a wuxia writer. Okay, so I'm at the end of doing this video. I'm about to my throat is about to inflame. Before I go, I'll quickly mention I actually opened the Ko-Fi page. It's like similar to Patreon, but right now I don't have anything there, so I'm not doing those sort of similar different tiers, rewards, different extra content there. I just have it open, and I think you can just go there, and then if you want to buy me a coffee, it's $3, I think. It's much more relaxed. You don't have to stick to a schedule. You can just do it one go if you're interested in just supporting me. And maybe in the future I'll open more options, but currently I actually, for the summer, I'm gonna be away for 2 months, and it's gonna come very soon. So it doesn't make sense to start something and then I will be completely, like, my schedule will be completely out of whack. I wouldn't know whether I could do anything, especially when I'm back in China. Because of VPN, nobody knows if I could actually get anything on YouTube, on Instagram, on anything, because VPN these days are just like they can die at any moment. So because of that, I'm putting that off now, but I may start to do more regular stuff over there. Yeah, if you're interested, you can see the link in the description below. Also, everything that I can find about what I've talked about today, I'll leave the link below in the description. Thank you for watching Avenue X. I'll see you in my next video. Wow, live long and happy drama watching. And get emotionally destroyed by the 8th and last season of Game of Thrones.